You drove past it last week, the one on the edge of town, lights off, lot empty, a paper sign taped to the inside of the glass. You sat in that booth for 30 years, and now there's a chain on the door. Here is what I know that the evening news will not tell you. These restaurants are not dying because you stopped showing up. Most of them were bled out on purpose by people who walked away richer for it. I spent decades inside this business. I sat in the management meetings. I watched the numbers turn red long before the public ever saw a single locked door. I still remember a planning meeting back in 2014. A man in a very good suit saying the words sale, leaseback, like he was handing us a gift. Nobody in that room blinked. I should have. So I am going to count down 12 restaurant chains collapsing in 2026, from bad all the way to unthinkable. And the one sitting at number 1 did not go broke selling food. It went broke paying rent on buildings it used to own free and clear. Stay with me, because that story is worse than anything they have put on the news. Let me start where it still looks survivable. Number 12 is Denny's, and I want you to feel how strange this is. The diner that never closed. The one with the lights on at 3 in the morning when nothing else in town was open. For my whole life, Denny's was the place that was simply always there. That is exactly why this hurts. In the fall of 2024, the company announced it would shut roughly 150 locations, with about half of those gone by the end of that year and the rest closing through 2025. A diner that built its entire identity on never turning off the lights is now turning off the lights, one town at a time. The public story is the easy one. Higher egg prices, higher labor costs, fewer people eating breakfast out. All true. But here is what the insider red tells you. When a chain starts closing what it calls its underperforming stores, that word is doing a lot of hiding. Those are not bad restaurants. Many of them are old restaurants on real estate that costs more to sit on than the breakfast crowd brings in. The math stopped working, and the math stopped working because of choices made years ago. Therefore, you have to ask the question that pulls you up this list. If Denny's, the always open diner, is quietly pulling the plug on 150 doors, what is happening to the chains that were already weaker? Because it gets worse fast. Number 11 is Applebee's, and this one was supposed to be untouchable. The neighborhood grill, the 2 for $20 deal, the place where the whole town went after the high school game. At its peak, Applebee's ran well over 2,000 restaurants in the United States. Now the doors are closing by the dozens. The parent company has confirmed the brand is in a multi-year shrink, closing more locations than it opens, year after year. And analysts have tracked the American footprint sliding down by the hundreds over the last decade. Here is the part the press release will never say plainly. When a company tells you it is optimizing the portfolio, it means the brand stopped growing and started feeding on itself. They close the weak ones to make the average look healthy. The total number shrinks, but the quarterly slide looks smaller, so Wall Street stays calm. I watched this exact trick get run in real rooms. It is not a recovery plan. It is a managed decline dressed up in a clean suit. But Applebee's at least still has a pulse in most of the country. The next one is a chain you thought was thriving, and the cracks there are deeper than anyone admits. Number 10 is Outback Steakhouse. And I know what you are thinking. Outback is fine. Outback is busy. That is what makes this one land. In early 2025, the parent company, Bloomin' Brands, confirmed it was closing 41 restaurants across its brands, most of them Outback and Bonfish Grill locations. After a brutal stretch of falling traffic, same-store sales went negative, the stock fell hard, and the company that owns one of the most recognized steakhouse names in America started talking about right-sizing its base. Now connect it to your own life for a second. A steakhouse closes because the middle-class family that used to celebrate a birthday there is now looking at the menu, seeing $35 for a sirloin, and deciding to grill at home. That is not a fad. That is your neighbors running out of room in the budget. When a sit-down steak dinner becomes a luxury, the whole casual dining model that built suburban America starts to buckle. Outback feeling it means everybody is feeling it. Therefore, the question stops being, is this chain weak? The question becomes, what is eating all of them at once? Hold that thought, because we are about to get to the real answer. Number 9 is Cracker Barrel, and this collapse is different, because they did part of the damage to themselves in plain daylight. The old country store on the highway, the rocking chairs out front, the peg game on the table. For families driving across America, it was a comfort stop that felt like it never changed. Then in 2025, management decided it needed a refresh. They stripped down the old logo, modernized the look, and the loyal customers revolted. The backlash was enormous. The stock took a real hit, hundreds of millions in market value wiped out in days, and the company had to walk parts of it back. But the logo fight is just the surface. Underneath it, Cracker Barrel had been struggling for years, with an aging customer base and traffic that kept drifting down. The brand whose entire value was, "We never change," got led by people who decided change was the fix. When you do not understand why people loved you, you tear out the exact thing that kept them coming. That is not a marketing accident. That is leadership that stopped seeing the customer as a person and started seeing them as a number on a slide. And that disconnect between the people who run these chains and the people who love them is about to become the whole story. If you want to understand every layer of how this machine operates, the private equity playbook, the sale-leaseback tricks, the debt loading, all of it laid out in plain language. I wrote 3 books that go deeper than anything I can cover in a single video. They are called The Collapse, Dead Weight, and Collapse Cash. And together they walk you through exactly how wealth gets extracted from the places and people you love, and what you can do with that knowledge. You can find them linked in the description below. Now I need to make you a promise. Up to this point, I have given you the visible decline, the part you can see from your car. But starting right here, I am going to tell you who actually did this, because the closings you have been watching are not bad luck. There is a machine behind them, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Here is the machine in plain words. Over the last 20 years, most of these chains got bought by private equity firms, investment companies. They borrow enormous piles of money, use that borrowed money to buy the restaurant chain, and then they pile that debt onto the chain itself. The restaurant now owes the money, not the buyers. Then they collect fees, sell off the valuable parts, and walk away before the bill comes due. The chain is left carrying debt it never chose, paying interest instead of fixing the kitchen. That is not a downturn. That is a designed outcome. Remember that, because every chain left on this list got run through some version of that machine. Number 7 is On the Border, and this is where the machine leaves its first real body. The Tex-Mex chain, the sizzling fajitas, the bottomless chips and salsa. In March of 2025, On the Border filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. At its height, the chain ran well over 150 locations. By the time it filed, it had been closing restaurants fast, with dozens going dark in just the months before the filing, and the company admitting it could not service its debt. Read that last part again. It could not service its debt. Not, people stopped eating fajitas. The food was fine. The customers still came. What killed it was the loan. When a chain spends every dollar of profit just paying interest, there is nothing left to fix a leaking roof, train a new cook, or update a tired dining room. So the experience slowly gets worse. The customers slowly drift, and the people who loaded on the debt are long gone, counting money in another state. On the Border did not lose a food fight. It lost a finance fight that was rigged before the first chip hit the basket. But a bankruptcy with a buyer is one thing. The next chain shows you what happens when there is almost nobody left to save. Number 6 is Boston Market, and I want you to sit with this number because it is one of the most staggering collapses in American restaurant history. In the late 1990s, Boston Market, once called Boston Chicken, ran more than 1,200 locations. It was everywhere. The rotisserie chicken, the cornbread, the family dinner, you could pick up on the way home without cooking. Today, the number of locations left is in the dozens. Some counts put the surviving stores under 30, from over 1,200 to under 30. That is not a decline. That is a vanishing. What happened? The brand changed hands again and again, and in its final ownership, it got hit with a wave of lawsuits, unpaid vendors, locked up bank accounts, and even state regulators shutting locations over unpaid wages. Workers showed up to find the doors locked and their checks bounced. Suppliers stopped delivering because they were not being paid. A chain that fed millions of American families got hollowed out until there was almost nothing standing. And here is what makes me angry. Even now, none of that was the chicken's fault. The food still had fans. The brand still had name recognition any startup would kill for. It was the ownership, the money handling, the decisions in the back office that finished it. The customer was never the problem. The customer was the last one to find out. Therefore, as we climb higher, the pattern is locking into place. Good brand, loyal customers, killed from the inside. Now it gets personal, because the next part is about you. Let me stop the countdown for a moment and talk directly to your life, because this is where all of this stops being a story about distant companies and starts being a story about your town and your money. When one of these restaurants closes in your area, here is what actually happens around you. First, the jobs go. A single sit-down restaurant employs 40, 50, sometimes 60 people. Servers, cooks, dishwashers, managers, the teenager working their first job. When the doors lock, those paychecks vanish from your local economy all at once. Those are people who spent their money at the gas station, the grocery store, the barber down the street. That money stops circulating in your town. Second, the building rots. That empty restaurant on the corner does not get filled quickly. Commercial vacancies in a lot of American towns are sitting longer than they have in years. An empty building drags down the value of everything around it, including the homes nearby. You feel it in your own property, even if you never ate there. Third, and this is the one nobody connects, the prices at the places that survive go up. When competition disappears, the restaurants left standing have less reason to keep prices fair. Fewer choices means more power for whoever is left. So the same collapse that took your favorite diner also quietly makes your next meal out more expensive. You pay twice, once in nostalgia and once at the register. And here is the part I need you to really hear. The money did not disappear. When these chains were stripped and loaded with debt, somebody collected. The investment firms took their fees, the executives took their bonuses, and their stock. The real estate got sold to landlords who now collect rent forever. The wealth moved from your town, from those workers, from those buildings, straight up to a handful of firms you will never see. You did not lose that money in a fair fight. It was moved, on purpose, while you were told it was just the economy. Now hold on to that, because the final 5 chains are where this machine did its worst work. Number 5 is Hooters. And yes, I know how this one sounds, but the collapse is real and the story is pure machine. The chain founded in 1983, a name everybody in America knows. In the spring of 2025, Hooters of America filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, weighed down by debt, reported to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Locations had already been closing across the country, including company-owned restaurants shut down in waves in the months before the filing. Here is the insider truth underneath it. Hooters was bought and sold by private investment groups, loaded with debt and squeezed for returns. The brand that was once a cultural fixture became a balance sheet to be optimized. And when the debt got too heavy and traffic dipped, there was no cushion, because the cushion had already been extracted years earlier. The plan after bankruptcy was to hand more of it to franchise groups, push the risk down the chain, and let the founders' partners try to salvage the name. It is the same fingerprint every single time. Borrow against the brand, strip the value. Leave the shell to fight for survival. The logo on the sign changes, but the crime scene looks identical. But a chain that files at a few hundred locations is one thing. The next one fell from the top of the mountain. Number 4 is Ruby Tuesday. And this one genuinely hurts me because of how big it once was. In its prime, Ruby Tuesday operated over 900 restaurants. The salad bar, the booth where you took your family after church. A true national chain that anchored shopping centers in every region of the country. Today, it is a shadow, down to roughly 200 locations or fewer after a bankruptcy filing back in 2020 and a long, grinding series of closures that has continued ever since. From over 900 to around 200. Think about what that means for the towns that lost theirs. Ruby Tuesday filed for Chapter 11 in October of 2020, closing dozens of restaurants outright and never recovering its footing. And the years before that filing were a steady drumbeat of underperforming stores being shut, the same managed decline, the same optimization language, the same slow bleed, while ownership changed hands. Here is what I learned watching chains like this from the inside. There is a point of no return that the public never sees coming. Once a chain shrinks past a certain size, it loses the buying power and the advertising budget that kept it competitive. The decline feeds itself. Fewer stores means weaker, marketing means fewer customers means more closures. The people running it know exactly when that spiral starts. They do not warn you. They just quietly start planning which doors close first. Therefore, the closer we get to number one, the clearer the truth becomes. These were not weak brands. They were strong brands, drained until they were weak. And the last two are the proof. Number 3 is TGI Fridays. And this is a fall that should be taught in business schools as a warning. The original American casual dining icon. The place that basically invented the whole category of the fun, loud, after-work restaurant with the flair on the walls. At its peak, TGI Fridays ran more than 600 locations in the United States. In November of 2024, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. By then, the American count had collapsed toward the low hundreds, and the closures kept coming, dozens of restaurants going dark in a single stretch. Now, here is the financial machinery, and it is brutal. TGI Fridays had been owned by investment groups for years. A deal to take it public through a merger fell apart. The debt stayed. And when the bankruptcy came, the filing showed a brand that had been managed for the benefit of its owners and lenders, not for the long-term health of the restaurants themselves. The brand name and the operating company had even been split apart, so the value of the trademark sat in one place, while the restaurants that actually served you food were left holding the weakness. That is the trick at its purest. Separate the valuable name from the struggling stores. Let the stores fail. Keep collecting on the name. The waitress who lost her job and the regular who lost his Friday booth were never part of that calculation. They were the cost of doing business, and the business was extraction. But even TGI Fridays, even a fall from 600 restaurants, is not the worst story I have for you. Because the chain at number 1 did something the others did not. It paid rent to live in its own house. Before I give it to you, look at the pattern one more time, because it makes the finale land. Denny's, quietly closing. Applebee's, managed down. Outback, right-sizing. Cracker Barrel, gutting its own soul. Buffalo Wild Wings, shrinking the dining room. On the border, bankrupt on its debt. Boston Market, from 1,200 to nearly nothing. Hooters, stripped and filed. Ruby Tuesday, from 900 to 200. TGI Fridays, the icon, in Chapter 11. Every one of them touched by the same machine. Borrowed money in, real value out. The customer left with the empty lot. Number 1 is Red Lobster. And I need you to understand that what happened here is not just a bankruptcy. It is the clearest, cruelest example of the entire machine, all in one company. And the details come straight out of the bankruptcy filings from 2024. Start with what Red Lobster was. The seafood restaurant for the whole of Middle America. The place you went for a graduation, an anniversary, a Mother's Day, the Cheddar Bay biscuits. For people who lived nowhere near the ocean, Red Lobster was the ocean. At its height, it ran around 700 locations and was the largest seafood restaurant chain in the world. Now here's the part the news mentioned and then dropped. In May of 2024, Red Lobster filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and announced the closure of dozens upon dozens of locations, with more than 90 restaurants shut down in the weeks around the filing. The headlines blamed the endless shrimp deal, that all-you-can-eat promotion that supposedly cost the company tens of millions when customers ate more than expected, and people laughed. They made jokes about shrimp bankrupting a giant. The shrimp story was easy, it was funny, and it was a smokescreen. Here is what really happened, and it goes back to that meeting I told you about at the very beginning. Years earlier, in 2014, Red Lobster was sold to a private equity firm called Golden Gate Capital. To help pay for that purchase, the new owners did something that sounds technical but is actually devastating. They sold off the real estate. The actual land and buildings under hundreds of Red Lobster restaurants were sold to a real estate company in a sale-leaseback deal. Red Lobster, which had owned much of the ground it stood on, suddenly had to rent its own restaurants back forever. Do you understand what that did? Overnight, A chain that had no rent on hundreds of buildings now had a permanent, rising rent bill on all of them. That cash, the money that used to be a cushion, the money that could survive a bad quarter or a slow winter, got turned into a check, mailed to a landlord every single month for the rest of time. The buildings that should have been Red Lobster's greatest strength became its heaviest chain. The private equity owners got their money out. The restaurant got the bill. So, when a bad promotion came along, when seafood costs rose, when traffic dipped just a little, there was no cushion left to absorb it. The cushion had been sold in 2014. The endless shrimp did not bankrupt Red Lobster. The endless rent did. The shrimp was just the thing they let you blame so you would not look at the real estate deal a decade earlier. And here is the detail that should make every one of us stop cold. The people who designed that structure, the firms that bought it and stripped it and traded it, did not lose their homes when those 90 restaurants closed. The servers did. The line cooks who had worked there 20 years did. The towns that lost their gathering place did. The wealth was pulled out the top in 2014, and the consequences were paid at the bottom 10 years later by people who never sat in a single one of those meetings. That is the whole story of this list in one company, a strong, beloved American brand, a financial firm that saw it not as a restaurant, but as assets to be extracted, a deal that fed the few and starved the many. And at the end of it, you, standing in an empty parking lot, holding a memory, being told it was just the economy. It was not just the economy. It was a choice. It was a series of choices made by people in good suits, in quiet rooms, who knew exactly what selling the real estate would do, and did it anyway. Because the money was good, and the consequences were somebody else's problem. I sat near enough to those rooms to know the language. I heard the word leaseback land softly while everyone nodded. I did not understand then what I was watching. I do now. So here is what I need you to walk away with tonight. The America you remember, the one with the diner that never closed and the steakhouse for birthdays and the seafood place for Mother's Day, did not simply fade because tastes changed. It was taken apart and sold for parts, while you were handed a funny story about shrimp so you would not ask who got rich. You are the kind of person who already felt this in your gut. You drove past the empty lots, and you knew the official explanation did not add up. You were right. You were right the whole time, and now you have the names, the dates, and the machine that proves it. So, tell me something, and be specific, because I read these. Which one of these did you watch disappear in your own town? Was it the Red Lobster, where you had your anniversary? The Ruby, Tuesday after church? The Boston Market, on the way home from work? Drop the name of the chain and the town in the comments below, and tell me what closing it took from you. I want to read every single one. And if you are the kind of person who would rather hear the truth about where this economy is actually headed than swallow another press release, then stay with me here. This is a place for people who refuse to be told it is fine when they can see with their own eyes that it is not. Because the next chains in this machine are already being lined up right now. And there is one American grocery name, one you shop at every week, that is showing every early sign Red Lobster showed in 2014. I am going to show you exactly what to watch for before the doors close. Do not let them tell you it was just the economy. You know better now. That's the surface of it. But the part I left out, the sale-leaseback playbook behind each collapse, picked up right where I stopped, lives inside my membership, The Circle. In there, you can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. No bot. You'd belong among thousands, just like you. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen and cancel anytime. One click, no risk. Come join me. If this opened your eyes, stay with me here on the channel. I keep digging into the stores and restaurants, quietly falling apart, telling you what others won't. There's more waiting for you right now.